Senator and Ms. McClout, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Staffstrom and the ranking and chairs. Senator Tony Hwang, I am here in support of our community and constituent, and a big thank you to this committee for raising House Bill 5507. I will defer the rest of my time to a constituent and an advocate, Ms. Meghan McCloat, for the remainder of the 3 minutes, but I want to thank you to the committee's condolence on this.
Thank you all. My name is Meghan McCloat. I am a resident of the town of Fairfield. I'm also a member of the Sasko Creek Neighborhood Environment Trust, which is the advocacy group leading against these issues that we're seeing happen in Fairfield, Southport, and now the city of Bridgeport. It's probably no surprise to many people on this committee that there's a lot of issues around these proposed monopole projects. It's a tough balance to strike as a result of the fact there's no denying that we need to fortify our grid and make sure that we provide long-term sustainable electric transmission, but we've got a lot of issues for the way that this has impacted our town. And we see that this is obviously going to be an issue if continuing along this course for other towns and municipalities in the state. There's a lot of things in this bill that I first must commend the people who drafted this bill. It's almost as if they were listening to the community and the constituents and drafted exact language to answer those needs. And that's really refreshing from a constituent perspective, because we really finally feel that there's an opportunity to be heard after many months of a long drawn out battle of not being heard and feeling like we didn't have adequate notice. There are laws in place for reasons, and it doesn't seem that a lot of our utility providers are following a lot of those laws, and this legislation really expands on codifying what those notice requirements are. What I really like about some of the pieces in this legislation is that it directly speaks to the impact of the economic issues as a result of these monopoles. And I say that because it's really important to look at this from a broader scope of not only environmental justice, but economic justice, and making sure we're delivering that to all levels on an equal basis. The reality is that this legislation now requires people to look at what the economic impact would be, requiring appraisals, requiring that the notice is given not only to the chief executive officer of a town, but to the entire legislative representation at that town or municipality. That way we feel as neighbors, we would never be in this situation again where there wasn't enough adequate notice. There wasn't enough description about what the plan was. Things were branded as a rebuild when in fact they were an entirely new substantive project that was much bigger than any of the structures that were already in place. But the reality is that the cost analysis requirements of this would make it much more difficult for the Siting Council to skirt their obligation to its community members and its ratepayers of what it costs when they analyze what this project would be. Why they didn't show what the options would be if it was perhaps a longer term investment with a better return on their investment funds. This legislation requires them to literally and explicitly say what it is they're trying to do. And that's why we're in support of House Bill 5507.
Thank you, Ms. McCloat. Questions from the committee? If not, I want to thank you for your advocacy. Certainly, I want to thank Senator Hwang as well. This is certainly one of those issues that has transcended party lines and transcended town lines. I've been fortunate enough to be working with him on this legislation and on some of the impact that this project's going to have on both of our communities, and frankly how it highlights concerns that should be shared across the state of Connecticut with these types of projects. And so thank you both for being here today.
And I want to thank you, Chairman Staffstrom, for your leadership on this, because it's not just one town. It's Fairfield, Southport, Bridgeport. But I think most important of all, we're always going to have an ongoing conversation as it relates to transmission lines, our need for power. This is one where transparency and accountability to the consumers and the communities that will be impacted. I know there's a real concern in regards to how that may possibly restrict or impact transmission line buildup to meet our power needs in our state. But nevertheless, I think there's a balance. There's a balance in regards to proper notification, proper engagement, and be able to get the facts. And I thought the language, and I concur with Ms. McCloat, that this is a bill that was very well crafted, but it addressed the issues of a conversation that was sorely needed. And I want to thank this committee for your leadership in initiating it and our support of it. So I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. And I think, that certainly highlights the concern. I don't know that in any other state in the country, a utility company would go and propose a high energy transmission line smack through the downtown of that state's largest city without any sort of community outreach whatsoever. It's really, really kind of mind boggling. So thank you both for being here. Joni Webster will be next.